Welcome to the Your Message Received podcast. And now, taking your message to the finish line, your host, John Duffin.
Hey folks, John Duffin here with Duffin Media. Welcome back to another episode of Your Message Received. Your Message Received is the home, the place, the platform to help you find your best, most true, authentic business voice. Or heck, just maybe your own true, authentic voice. Get what you want, find what you need, improve your results, meet the person of your dreams, make billions of dollars. We're not guaranteeing those last two yet. We're working on it. But if you continue to watch, what you'll see is the other ones tend to come to life. And we love the fact that you continue to watch, subscribe, share, tell all your friends and family. Please keep doing that. And we will continue to drive the content right through your front door. And one of the reasons I feel very confident that we get to deliver that sense of helping you find your own arc to authenticity is we bring people on who walk the walk. Today is certainly no exception. I get to bring actor, filmmaker, storyteller, all around energetic, great, good guy, Matt Drago here to the set. Matt, welcome to the show, man. Nice to have you.
John, it is so great to be here. I honestly am really psyched about this episode. This is going to be awesome.
Well, I hope I can live up to the pressure. So here's what I'm always curious. So I have a younger brother who did community theater, and I love the fact that you did it as well too. I love because it doesn't happen that often when I talk to people where they knew what they wanted to do when they were a kid, and so often people with the best intentions bounce into a situation or have to, recoup and or recover. You knew really early on. And I want you to tell me about, was it your grandma taking you to Broadway?
That was definitely a big part of it, but I
Mhm.
think I had like the bug inside of me since I can
Mhm.
remember.
Mhm.
I really was one of those kids growing up in rural Virginia that
Mhm.
just really needed my own creativity, my own
Mhm.
imagination, and that was always enough. I didn't need a lot of toys. I
Mhm.
grew up on a dojo deck. My dad is actually a sensei, and so I grew up doing martial arts. I'm a fourth degree black belt, so
Mhm.
it was always about the practice of something, and I think
Mhm.
storytelling was a practice that just gravitated towards me since I can remember. Because again, telling stories is just, I don't know, it makes you feel alive, right? And
Mhm.
inhabiting characters makes you feel alive. So you picked up on it right away. I mean, in rural Virginia, there wasn't a lot of TV and film at the time. So it was about how can I do this, right? How can I just kind of be around my people and hone in my craft? And that was
Mhm.
local theaters. And I just always tell actors, like, be in the local theaters. It's a great
Mhm.
medium just for you to be able to explore. It's before you grow up and you have to worry about like adult things, right? So it's your opportunity. And I think I did probably about, I don't know, John, like 15 or 20 community theater shows growing up, starting at
Really?
4 years old. Yeah,
Wow.
I was always on stage. Like I just
Okay.
loved being on stage and I loved like, whatever the role would be. I mean,
Mhm.
sometimes it would be more of a supporting, sometimes it would be more of a lead. It didn't
Mhm.
matter to me because I was part of something. And it's such a team sport. I found myself like, just really having conversations with people like that were hanging the lights or, making the sound great. It was just it was always a world that I wanted to be a part of in
Mhm.
any way that I could be. And that really just kind of gravitated me towards the next first paying gig that I had, which in
Mhm.
Virginia was dinner theater. And this was a really interesting thing for me because in dinner theater, it's a really humbling practice. You're up on stage,
Mhm.
whether you're a supporting or a lead character, it
Mhm.
doesn't matter. You get off stage and you're clearing plates and refilling drinks. And so I think it made me realize from a really early age that this dream was going to be work. And I think I've always realized this in my life that dreamers are fighters. Don't sleep on dreamers. Like we'll fight for our dreams and we'll
Mhm.
do everything that we can to keep the dream alive. So, in being authentic to myself, it perpetuated me to my next chapter, which was
Mhm.
moving New York City and continuing the dream there.
Before we get to New York, I'm very curious about something, which is, like I said, in rural Virginia. What was the attendance like at dinner theater? Like, like I guess
Huge.
it depends on the night, but it was big crowds that they were getting.
Huge. And I mean, I actually was in two children's shows there. I played
Mm.
Mowgli in the Jungle Book. I played Hansel and Gretel. And then I did one main stage show, which was the show at night. But, the shows in the morning for the Jungle Book and Hansel and
Right.
Gretel, packed with kids. And, one thing that I loved with performing for kids specifically
Hmm.
is you can't lie. Like, you got to bring the energy. Like, if you don't bring the
Hmm.
energy, they're not going to react. So it really was on you even at 9 a.m., 10
Hmm.
a.m. to bring the energy. And it was actually, ironically, one of my professional, my first gigs, my a national tour that I booked was a theater show, and it was busing, trucking around, the country and having these really early morning shows. So again, it really taught me just to bring the energy to it at all times and hope that you can receive it as well.
How about alleviating fear? Was like whether it was the first time or the first couple of times when you're looking outward, and obviously you're in your character and all that sort of thing. But what was it like for you to get past the fear element, or was that a non-factor for you?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, John. I think like for me, it's always been about like the immersion in the character, and I
Hmm.
think that
Hmm.
really does help. I mean, preparation is key in everything in life, right? So I think it's no different when you're telling a great story on stage
Hmm.
or on a film set. It's, finding your process. I always find, that that is the key element to really whatever industry you're in life is to really hone in on what your unique process is and then fine tune it, right? Because maybe something needs to be adjusted here or there. So
Hmm.
that was a big thing for me. As a child, my
Hmm.
process was a lot different than it is now. You adopt things, you take things, you eliminate things as the journey continues. But for me, it was really about creating a foundation. It's always been about creating a foundation. That way, I felt like I was prepared. And then I had actually had a great, acting teacher in New York City, that really became like a grandfather to me that I talked about with, nerves, we'll call
Hmm.
them, and not
Yeah, exactly.
necessarily, yeah, not necessarily fear, but
Hmm.
definitely nerves. And the way
Hmm.
that he said it to me was really intuitive, and I mean, it's just one of the many reasons why I love him. He said, "You have nerves. Good. That means you care."
Oh my God, I love that. Was
And
that
and and,
Terry
and
Schreiber?
Yes, that's Terry
Okay,
Schreiber. Yeah,
nice.
he really did. I mean, studying with him for 2.5 years and really just understanding like, the ability to be nurtured by an
Mhm.
acting coach and telling you what you needed to hear in the moments that you needed to hear it really steered me in the right direction for sure.
Matt, I had a boss in the sales field say something similar to me about don't worry about, some people had said to me things like, well, he's so energetic, and they didn't mean it as a compliment, right?
Mm.
And she's like, it just proves you have a pulse. Here's what it did for me, and it sounds like it did something similar. It made me not beat myself up nearly as much and want to continue or to be a little more authentic when someone is nice enough to understand where you're coming from and even just let you know that you're okay. That's that, So I'm guessing that was Terry for you.
100%. I mean, again, I was always one of those acting teachers. I mean, you hear it sometimes that there's
Right.
some acting teachers that break you down and then they
Right.
build you back
Right.
up. I really never gravitated to that. I mean,
Hmm.
again, I grew up in a dojo. I
Hmm.
grew up with people that were U.S. Marshals and jail guards and like actually like really hard people, right?
Hmm.
Like people
This was
that
your
did
neighborhood, so to speak. I know in
this is
rural
my
that it's
yeah
neighborhoods is,
right this was my family, this was my karate family, right? And so
okay.
for me it just kind of gave me the temperament of not ever gravitating to somebody that could break me down, but somebody
Hmm.
that could nurture me and create a safe space and
Hmm.
create an environment where I could find just a path for myself. And Terry
Right.
did that because Terry uniquely has studied all of
Hmm.
the major acting art forms and methodologies, and so he would give you freely. We'll try Meisner, we'll try Stanislavski, we'll try Strasberg. I even did kabuki training, which is body work, which is a Japanese art form to really find the character within your own body. Like, I mean, if
Hmm.
you're talking to me as Matt right now, and then you see Fabian Verdugo in somewhere in Montana,
Right.
my body language will be completely different. And so there's just a lot of things that you can do again to find your process. But Terry basically like gave it all to you and then
Hmm.
allowed you to adopt your own adventure within that practice. And I think that's what made him and still makes him a really key element to my success and to where I am at right now as an actor.
Mm. So you've moved. I mean, back then. I'm sorry. I'll say it better. So back then, so you've moved to New York and you're getting coached and trained. What was it like for you? Which is obviously it's not, maybe if it's not as competitive as LA or Hollywood, it's certainly close. What's it like? What was it like for you in regards to the competitive process, in regards to going for jobs? What was it like in regards to building resilience for you, or was that not a factor?
That's a great question because I actually was thinking about this the other day. I
Mm.
mean, as an equity actor, which for your listeners is the Broadway Union,
Mhm.
you can go to their Midtown office and, you can wait all day. But when you're non-union, you don't have an audition slot. Sometimes you're waiting
Mhm.
4 to 6 to sometimes even 8 hours to audition for, a Phantom of the Opera on Broadway or Les
Right.
Mis or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And it really does. It teaches you, to your point, that resilience. And,
Mhm.
I think there are days I was thinking about this. It's like you're so intuitive because I was literally thinking about this the other day. And there were days where I went to the Actors Equity Building and I'd wait, 8 hours. And John, I wouldn't audition. I didn't get a slot, like the equity members, got the slots first and the non-union members hoped to get in
Yeah.
afterwards. But I think about those times all the time and I'm like, but it's good that I went. It's good that like I went for eight
Mhm.
hours and that I was willing
Mhm.
to sit there for 8 hours to literally go into a room and maybe have like 1 to 2 minutes with like the casting
Mhm.
directors and the producers and the directors. Like, what kind of resilience does it take to do that? And I did that almost every week. While
Mm.
I was in New York City,
Right.
like I would go down there. And then when I got my equity card, I mean, of course,
Mhm.
like I was going all the time because then I was front in line. I'd
Yep.
I'd worked my way
Mhm.
up to
Yep.
be able to audition and not have to wait those 6 to 8 hours.
Mhm.
But I'm really proud of myself because again, there's a great quote that I actually just posted on my Instagram,
Mhm.
and it's about failure, but I mean, the reality is like, I'm proud of my failures because
Mhm.
like, a lot of people don't necessarily like it's almost like I think the quote is, I've failed more times than you've tried, right? And
Yeah, absolutely.
you
Yeah.
know what I mean? And
Mhm.
I do. I feel like there are some people that, are afraid of failure.
Mhm.
Clearly, I'm not. Clearly, it
Mhm.
doesn't phase me. Clearly, I look at it like it's part of the process. Like,
Mhm.
like if I, do something where I feel like I'm really right for something and I don't get the role, I'm still proud of myself because I
Mhm.
tried, because I brought my work to it. And again, so much of acting is enjoying those little moments. And I always say this, the journey is the destination. Like understanding that you have no control after an audition, but
Mhm.
enjoying the work that you can bring to a role is the gift that we get to do and be kids and be storytellers. And that's why I love it so much.
I love every part of that. Now, this will sound like a jaded question, but I'm gonna risk it, which is this. How long did it take you in the process before you get your equity card, before you know what I mean, you're at the front of the line to believe that?
To believe that I
That
was
the journey's the process, and that's the
right.
gift. But did you believe that right away? How long did it take you to believe it?
I think there's times in your life where, you get bogged down with things. I think for me,
Sure.
I always innately enjoyed being around my people. Like I enjoyed
Mhm.
being around storytellers. So even if I didn't understand it to the point
Mhm.
that I might now, which is
Right.
a great way to put that,
Hmm.
and not jaded at all, by the way. Like I think
Hmm.
there was a point where I just did it to be around my people
Got it.
and to be having those conversations because again I could be waiting for 8 hours not audition, but it doesn't mean that maybe I didn't connect with a couple people in the
Hmm.
process. It
Hmm.
like I was always like a student of the game, so I think I always looked at it as that. And
Mhm.
yes, there are times in your life where you get bogged down by the business, you get bogged down by maybe some things not going your way. There's definitely a lot of downs in my career that I know that I've had, low moments where I maybe didn't believe in myself, but I've always been one of those people that enjoys just really the ability to
Mhm.
put myself in front of people that align with me. And that's kind of something that has always been inside of me as an artist.
And I think that one of those things when I think about uh, who gives up and who doesn't, and no judgment of any kind on that for those individuals. Like I said, this would be, I would think, a tremendously tough field. Knowing people in the field where they remind me the sense that, and I've just minor projects that I've done. So often, it's not like you talk about the people that break you down. They're there, and I mean they're real. But so often, it's a case of maybe I'm wrong, where you get no feedback, just nothing. You know what I mean? And then everything, the weight just goes up into the air. Why I harp on this with people is simply the sense of your very conscious choice to not give up and go back to the safe space of rural Virginia and keep going. Can you share what was the first opportunity that you recall where it was an equity opportunity and and it worked? Walk me through the steps in regards to that process and you got what you wanted.
Yeah, it was the first time I booked a gig, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
at that point, I felt like I was a professional actor because I
Hmm.
was, and you wear that badge
Hmm.
of honor proudly because again, like you said, you don't get feedback all the time. I mean,
Hmm.
I think a lot of the feedback that you get as an actor is being in your safe space in your acting class. Like, I
Right.
get that really great feedback
Hmm.
from Terry and
Hmm.
it felt like from that like that was good enough. Again, when I was in New York, I was bartending, I was
Hmm.
hustling to make money, but I
Yeah.
spent a lot of that money. I mean, I think
Hmm.
at one point, John, I had three different coaches. I had my acting coach, I had a vocal coach, I had an audition coach, and I hired the best of the best. I never skimped on that.
Got it.
Even if I could
Got it.
barely afford it, because
Hmm.
those were the people that were going to give me the best feedback. Now,
Wow.
I mean, that's one step of it. That's
Hmm.
building your foundation, that's building your practice. But I've thought about
Hmm.
this a lot, and I think that for me, there was a point when I was in college, not to divert from your question,
No,
where
of
I thought
course.
about that. I thought about this the other day,
Hmm.
and I really, at a certain point in college, really was honed in on
Hmm.
becoming like an A student actor. Like
Ah.
I took on the extra scenes. I worked my butt off. I
Hmm.
wanted to impress people. I did the work. I wanted to show them that I did the work. And I think because I had Terry guiding me at the same time,
Hmm.
he kind of nurtured that out of me because the reality is that that was actually hurting my process. So when I started to work with him, it became a little bit more instinctual where I found that the practice was my own and it didn't matter if I got an A or an F. It didn't matter. Like it was about really kind of letting go. I think when, we achieve things in life, really in any profession, we just kind of, whether you're religious or spiritual, you just
Right.
kind of like let it go in some ways. You know
Hmm.
that you've done the work, you feel like you understand the process of creating characters, which is the job of the actor,
Hmm.
and then you let it go. And I really was. I was thinking about that the other day because I was like, Terry gave me the ability to let it go. And now I don't really think about being in acting classes the same way
Oh, wow.
because I
Okay.
I know I know that
Hmm.
like I've done this work my whole life, but for me, I don't want to fall into the trap of feeling like I need to be an A student actor anymore.
Hmm.
I love to know that all of the work that I've done my whole life is inside me, and I can uniquely bring, just the freedom of understanding, like, listen, like, instincts and just these things that I've had inside of me my whole life in wanting to tell stories. Now that I've understood how to craft that, can be enough, and
Mhm.
I don't have to always second guess myself. So it's actually really
Mm.
unlocked a really key element to my acting, and it's not being lazy at all. I mean, don't think that it's lazy. It's because of my innate ability to impress people like at
Mhm.
an early stage in my life, that when I started to let that go, I really found like I could just do the work, say the words, be in the moment, and
Mm.
really and unlock myself as an actor.
I love that. So you've referred to, and forgive the repetition here. So you've referred to a number of times in the past, Sam Christensen, and you talk about the ability or a workshop or your ability to become a strong storyteller. Walk me through that process, if you don't mind.
Sam is extraordinary. We lost him a couple years ago, but I'm so glad that I got to work with
Hmm.
him. He uniquely, and I say this all the time, there's so many masters of craft in this
Hmm.
industry that people don't give enough credit to. I
Hmm.
think casting directors, the really good ones, are one that like really should get a lot of credit, because
Right.
for him, he was a casting director for MASH. And you think
Yeah.
about like a show that had so many guest stars and little supporting characters. Well, Sam was one of those people that would go to the off-Broadway shows and be like, oh, that actor does that unique thing, or like she's got a really cool energy. And he started to really, because he had so many actors that he would keep in his mind, and I don't know how, where he would just understand what it was that uniquely made them them,
Oh my
something
God.
that they gave off that they couldn't even control, right? He called it the actor's myth, and he branded that in a
Huh.
workshop. And I
What's that?
really so the actor's myth essentially is again what that actor gives off as like a person,
Hmm.
as an actor, that they can't even control. It's just how they're viewed, right? Because we're always viewing each other in real life too,
Like
right?
energy?
Energy,
Okay.
and just kind of characteristics, and
Hmm.
just things about them that make them uniquely them. And so I think that that was a really cool thing about Sam. I mean, we'd go into this workshop, and it was at Terry Schreiber's studio, and
Okay.
there would
Okay.
be like 15 or 20 of us, and
Hmm.
we would just sit in front of them, like literally just
Hmm.
being, and people would write down notes about like how our energies were coming across, and giving verbs, or like to what that energy looked like.
Hmm.
And it was very eye-opening for me, because there's two different things that you can do as an actor. You can either lean in on the energy that you're giving,
Hmm.
or you can resist it, and resisting it is always the wrong thing,
I was gonna
because
say, right? That's yeah, that
you
doesn't
are
feel like a
uniquely
good
you.
move.
It's
Uh,
never a good move, but a lot of times you're viewed in a way that maybe you don't like, right?
mhm.
There were parts of my the people that analyzed me, or that saw that
Right.
that saw me as arrogant, or overly passionate, or
Hmm.
dramatic, or
Hmm.
emotional. Well, these are all things that are true, but you can reshape those, because I mean, if you look at like arrogance, well, it's pride,
Hmm.
it's strength. It can divert itself into different things. I mean,
Right.
let's be honest, there have been a lot of very arrogant
Hmm.
leaders, and people that have moved things along in the course of our
Hmm.
history. And so like you just find ways to adopt that, knowing that it's not necessarily part of who you necessarily
Hmm.
are, but it's the way that you come across. And so when you start leaning in on that, I started to talk to Sam, and he told me about my myth. My myth is the gift of returns, where I give so
Oh,
much of myself.
okay.
I'll burn myself out. I will, go down with my own ship, and I hope that somehow, some way, that'll come back to me. And what's really ironic is that is a part of me as Matt, but it's something that
Mhm.
I give off as an actor. And it really just unlocked a key element to me as an actor.
Mhm.
And then, fast forward down the road a little bit, I was working in a steak restaurant, and I met this girl that, her and her husband were from Montana, and she needed an agent, and she was struggling in LA, and I helped her get my agent. And then a couple years later, she's the one that called me up and said, Matt, I found this really beautiful script called Somewhere in
Somewhere in
Montana that my friend
Montana. So there,
that
there
my friend
really is the
Brandon.
Montana
Yeah,
person that got you.
yeah,
I,
yeah.
I
And
love
again,
that.
it's
I,
like the gift of returns, right? So it's all going back to Sam Christensen and what I learned
that's
there.
that's crazy cool. Now, what gave you the guts or the what was the real purpose to move to LA? Forget
Um,
aside from the obvious. You know what I mean? It is LA and that's the film. But what gave you the drive to go get it?
Yeah, I met a girl. I met a girl
Got it.
in Terry Shriver's class, and Terry was just again somebody that told me what I needed to know when I needed to know it, and
Hmm.
so unique because there aren't many people that really do that for you in life. I find that like
Hmm.
will tell you something that maybe you need to hear, but it might be even at their own detriment. He brought
Hmm.
me into his office one day. It's a conversation that I don't I actually was going to call him really next week because I've been thinking about him a lot.
Oh God, call him.
He
Call him.
yeah,
Hmm.
I need to. I really do. You're right, John,
Hmm.
because I need to tell him like how important that conversation was. It was
Hmm.
very innocuous at the time, but it really resonated with me on a big way where I started to digest it. And I was really down. I was very close to a lot of
Mm.
Broadway roles, really like coming like runner up, that close,
Right.
and just coming a little bit short. And so it made me feel like I know that I can do this. Like I know that I'm on the precipice of something, but I
Hmm.
just always fall short, and that's really tough, right? And so we had this conversation, and he's been seeing me act in his class for now 2.5 years.
Right.
And, even in this moment where he knows he would lose me as a student if I ended up moving, he
Yeah.
said to me, Matt, I really feel like what I'm seeing in class, like you should really give LA a shot. Like
Hmm.
you have a lot of film and TV potential. And, New York will always be here. The stage will always be here.
Hmm.
And he's just pouring out all of this love to me and telling me like, maybe to stretch my wings and go across
Hmm.
the country. And ironically, I'd met a girl literally one door down in his TV and film class, which was actually taught by Peter and Diane Miner, who Peter directed One Life to Live for
Oh my
many,
God.
many years.
Right.
And so I was paired together with this girl in acting class and
Hmm.
found out that we grew up 3 blocks away from each other in a small Virginia town.
No,
Uh,
in
we we
rural
we
Virginia. Now we're
we
back to
we
rural Virginia.
we literally I looked at my I was on at my grandma's apartment where I was
Right.
living at the time, and I was looking at the call sheet, and I said, I noticed that you have a 54 area code. Where are you
Hmm.
from in Virginia? And she said Front Royal, and I said, excuse me? She said Front Royal, Virginia. Have you heard of it? And I said, I'm from Front Royal.
That's amazing.
And she was like, well, really? No way. And I was like, no, my dad's the karate guy across from the Main Street
Hmm.
Cinema, and I know this person, I know this person. Well, what does your family do? She said, my family owns the Apple House, which is a small little family store that only somebody from that area would know. And on 79th and Broadway, I kid you not, John, I looked at my dresser and I had 3 things with the price tag still on them from the Apple House. And we were paired together in a breakup scene from Say
Yep.
Anything. So at that point, I literally looked at her and I said, well, we've already gotten the breakup out of the way. Are you ready to go out on a date? And
Wow.
that's where we kind of just hit it off right away. I just knew she was my person in that moment. Like we just
Mm.
we both knew, and that was at the same time that I had that really life-changing conversation with Terry. So it was
Mm.
those two elements that came together that made it so that right after Christmas and being with the family during the holidays, we were 2 kids. We packed a car. We went down to Virginia. We threw all of our stuff in a beat up, BMW. We drove across the country and we landed in LA the first week of January and just never looked back.
That's crazy nice. So you've done a fair amount of things prior to, and I want to touch more than touch on somewhere in Montana, but also look, I know that you've done the Disney's Counting Scars video. What would Jesus do? The journey continues. So Ridley Scott's Prophets of Science Fiction. Here's what I'd like. Oh, and no other way. So a friend of mine has done audio podcasts before, so I think that's also very cool.
Mhm.
How long did it take you once you got out to LA to get your first job?
I mean, define job, right? Because I
Oh,
was,
forgive me.
trying to.
Outside of a service related position, meaning a job that paid in the field that you chose.
Yeah, I booked a commercial pretty early
There
on.
you go.
At the time, I had a weird little thing where like I just decided to grow out my hair, and
Hmm.
my hair I think was like down to here, and like I kind of like looked like maybe a little bit of a pirate. So I booked a pirate in a Super Bowl commercial that was for Comcast Xfinity. That really helped me out.
I'll bet.
Listen, again, that was just really good fortune.
Hmm.
I really connected with the person that was the director of it, David LaChapelle, who is a insanely talented photographer.
Hmm.
And so, again, like these auditions sometimes when they're in person are about connection. And
Right.
I think I was just riding the wave of energy coming across the country and,
Hmm.
resetting and finding something new in my life. So that was a real gift. But again, paying jobs. I mean, I actually was AFTRA at the time, which is,
Hmm.
the American Film Television Radio
Sure.
Association, which then merged with SAG.
You
So
sag.
because those
Yep.
two merged, I became SAG-AFTRA.
Hmm.
And I really honestly took that same approach, almost like I did in New York City, where I was, staying for 8 hours,
Hmm.
to sing my 16 or 32 bars, where I would submit myself for, background and
Hmm.
stand-in just to
Great.
be on set, and they paid, right? So it was like a
Sure.
win-win because it's like if I could be on set for a week,
Hmm.
and just again, it's low stakes, right?
Hmm.
You're in the background, or I will say actually stand-in work is actually really gratifying. I loved doing stand-in work because you're working with the actors, you're working with the shot,
Hmm.
you are run sometimes they want you to run the scene, which is great, because then you get to show your stuff
Forgive my
a little bit.
dumbness. I've heard that expression a billion times, run the scene. Say it's, talk to me. Just explain what it means because I always gloss past it. What does run the scene mean?
So run the scene when you're on set is just kind of like utilizing the blocking that's been given to the actors,
Hmm.
right? The people
Yep.
that are actually going to be portraying those roles,
Hmm.
understanding the lighting setup. A lot of times, like they're still working and fine tuning what they want the shot to look like,
Hmm.
what they want the composition to
Hmm.
look like, how they're going to get the sound just right. And then your job really, even though you're not necessarily being coached in the same way that the actors are, is to do it in the ways that, the blocking will be. So that way, when they come in, they can literally fit themselves in
Wow.
to
Okay.
the whole apparatus that's been created around them.
Hmm.
That way they can, just focus on the character. But in the same time, I mean, I don't mean it the wrong way. Like as an actor, even if you are the stand-in and you're
Hmm.
not the one that's actually going to be on tape, you still get to act on a soundstage, right? You
Yeah.
still get to. So it's like the ways that you really I do I think it really goes back to the love of the game, right? It's like
Hmm.
because there are certain people that could probably tell me, well, you're not really acting if you're like a stand-in, and I'm
No,
like,
you
no,
really are
actually
acting.
you really are acting, like you
Hmm.
really are, like you're a piece to the puzzle, like you're very valuable. And there are stand-ins, believe it or not, that do it for their whole careers because they make such a great living doing it, but it is a skill.
Hmm.
There's a lot of like we talked about the casting directors earlier. There are a
Sure.
lot of skills that don't get a lot of credit in
Hmm.
this industry, but I think stand-in, we just uncovered that as
Yep.
another big one that taught me so much about
Hmm.
how to be on set and how to,
Yeah.
really, yeah, do the work and be a part of the team and really build those relationships because that's what it's all about in life.
The I just recently heard an expression that talks about that opportunities come to those who are ready. It's not just who are prepared, but the readiness that's a part of it. And I would imagine those like people running the scene, there's a different sense of readiness rather than I'm eager. It's more I'm not only prepared, but there's an element of proven. And I think that part's got to feel good in the sense that when your moment comes, that you've done your homework and you've been put in a position to win. Talk to me about the first time you were, and listen, being a pirate for the Comcast Xfinity commercial is great. Especially as you said, the Super Bowl, great. But when you had to really prepare for a character role, I want you to walk me through that process. I'm a big believer in needing to know, in that sense of how are you able to fully dive into a role, yet bring an element of yourself to it. How does
Yeah.
that work with your own process? And can you give me an example of one of the projects you've successfully done, how that worked?
Well, I'll definitely just resonate on Fabian Verdugo in Somewhere in
Right,
Montana because it
right.
is the first role that I've ever truly fallen in love with, if I'm being
Mm.
honest. And
Yeah.
I think, there's one thing that you said that I want to, piggyback on is that, there are parts of your career in any person's career where you're quote unquote unknown or an up and coming actor.
Mm.
And my friend Garrett Dillahunt, and who's married to Michelle Hurd, they're just
Hmm.
such lovers of actors, such
Hmm. Hmm.
fantastic human beings. And he said recently at a screening, because he's seen the movie with me a couple times.
Right.
We've sat next to each other at two screenings now,
Hmm.
and he said like, you've always been an actor. Like the
Mm.
way that he said that,
Hmm.
even with all of the incredible successes that him and his wife has had, to give me that, like that was a real gift. It was like, because I have struggled, and maybe it
Everybody
hasn't,
does, right?
right, maybe the bookings haven't come easy to me, but
Hmm.
I think it, when someone like that says something like that to you, you know
Hmm.
what it means. It really resonates because it's basically like him saying like, I know you were prepared. I know you've
Hmm.
done the work. I know that you were really just waiting for your moment,
Hmm.
and this is your moment. And
Right.
that's what he gave to me in that moment, and it meant so much to me. So I just wanted to say that. In
Love it.
terms of craft of
Hmm.
developing a character, I mean, it really does. It goes back to my days of really just honing in the craft,
Hmm.
and building this foundation, and understanding that the process is ever evolving, and that's okay. And a
Hmm.
lot of that I fully give to the ecosystem that Terry
Hmm.
Schreiber created for me in New York City. For me, I found that, for Fabian specifically, really went method, on this one. Like I
Okay.
really dived deep into him. I really
Hmm.
felt like I got him from an early stage.
Hmm.
This is a character that is a director that's fighting for his dream. As you can see, I don't have far to go there.
Right.
He's been through a lot of downs in his career.
Hmm.
He's somebody that, again, is passionate, and I felt him big, and I didn't apologize for that because
Hmm.
he is big, and so I gave myself the risk to feel him big because my acting teacher, said to me, like he said, You're feeling him big, but it's grounded at the same time, right? Because you want to make sure that if you're feeling a character big,
Hmm.
especially in TV and film, that like it's real, it's grounded in
Hmm.
something. So I'll backtrack. The way that I did that is, again, I really love to write backstories. Backstories for
Ah,
me with a character are
yeah.
very important because, again, it gives me the ability to almost do my investigation, and that's
Hmm.
really fun. It's like I
Hmm.
get to kind of see like what are the things that he's battling with in his psyche. Like how can I dive deeper? Like is this a guy that has, trouble like maintaining relationships outside of his film and TV, people?
Hmm.
Yes, like he doesn't have time for personal relationships
Hmm.
because the relationships that he is very focused on are his legacy, which is to leave a couple great stories behind. And as you can
Hmm.
tell, probably with my production company, I'm no
Hmm.
different than that. Like I have a very similar mindset. So I let a lot of myself into Fabian, and I let him a lot of himself into me. But I found different ways of
Hmm.
building the character through creating little things that I felt
Hmm.
about him, like if he's passionate, like is he the one that takes all the burden onto himself? Yeah. Does he forget to
Hmm.
eat meals, Yeah, he does. And so
Is
I
that you?
actually lost. That's not necessarily me. That is something a little bit different than me.
Hmm.
I'm a sports guy. I grew up
Yeah.
in the dojo. I like
Mhm.
drinking my protein shakes. I like lifting my weights. But
I gotcha.
but but Fabian is not that. Fabian
Mhm.
is, one of those alphas that really just is like completely cerebral at times, but really has a massive big heart underneath
Ah,
that.
okay.
So this for me was another big risk that I took is that I lost 25 pounds for this role.
Gotcha.
I hired great
Mhm.
nutrition and fitness coaches, Evolve Fitness, Nathan and Jennifer DeTracy, who, basically, again, you talk about team.
Yeah,
They told me how to do it because for me, it was about kitchen and cardio because I wanted to feel like I was in the body of this character.
I love
And
that
so
expression.
yeah, it was great because it was
Kitchen and
five small
cardio.
meals
That's really
throughout
cool.
the, yeah,
Yeah.
small meals throughout the day,
Hmm.
cardio sessions. They tell you what workouts to do, when to do them,
Hmm.
what to eat, when to eat it. And these are people that really do. They build different actor bodies, right? Because if I'm playing like a Greek god, like I'm going to do a lot of back exercises, I'm going to drink a lot of protein, I'm going to,
Hmm.
I'm going to do a lot of weight training and stuff like that. But for this, it was kitchen and cardio because that was how I wanted to tailor my body to be in
Hmm.
Fabian's body. And
Got
it
it.
really does. It gives you that like just vessel to feel
Hmm.
like when you step onto set, because it's almost like what we talked about in the
Right.
beginning, where you don't have the nerves, you know that you've
Hmm.
done the work, you know that
Hmm.
you've created the foundation, you've made all of these little choices, John, about like
Hmm.
all of these little intricacies about, the character. And I honestly could talk 2 hours about all the little intricacies
Hmm.
that I made with Fabian because I'd take voice memos, I'd write journals about him,
Hmm.
what I felt like he was, how he viewed the world. And then the most amazing part happens in
Oh.
acting. You come to set,
Hmm.
you're with great actors like Graham McTavish, Michelle
Right.
Hurd, Kate Orsini,
Hmm.
Jonathan Stoddard,
Hmm.
Kaylee Macchio, Tasha Gates, Andrew Roa, and you let it all go. And that's
Hmm.
when you just be. And
Hmm.
and that's kind of where I've gotten to the place in my acting where I know that I know how to do the work, but
Hmm.
I've learned how to let that work go
Yeah, but
when the
that's what you
moment.
got taught in New York.
Yeah.
Where first like was implanted, and I love when it gets carried into. I was gonna say into your real life, which makes no sense, but more in the sense that you're able to carry that to a future date. I love that. Like to me, one of the reasons I find it really refreshing. Now, by the way, not to like play Can You Top This or oh when I was in that. I wouldn't even insult you. But all I was going to say is I took acting lessons years ago. Here was my favorite part of it. My favorite part. And it was like when you talked about the backstories. So I come from a business mentality, and that's just what I happen to do. And so I had an acting coach. His name was Donald McKenna, based out of Philadelphia, PA. And his whole deal was the backstory. The
Hmm.
whole deal. It was an improv class. So I take it and I think of those, no offense, cornball sort of goofy comedy skit. Like that's what I thought it was going to be.
Hmm.
And it was so the opposite. And I just remember it was all heavy scenes too that he gave. They were like real
Yeah.
dark, heavy scenes. So I'm already confused, thinking it's like whose life is it anyway or whatever. And so but it was painting the picture, and he would send us all away for like a half hour, right,
Hmm.
literally a half hour. And it was like, and you just rode, and it's like he'd help, you know what I mean? It wasn't like just me, but that sense of, and I equate that part to business because you
Hmm.
had to let it all go. And when you said that, that sent chills through me because I remembered the feeling we were given like crazy. This was still acting crazy heavy scenes. Like, okay, you're going to shoot this guy like that, right? And and I just remember if somebody had asked me a half hour prior, are you capable of that? I've been like, no, no, no. And then you find out you are. And the
Hmm.
reason to me, which is why I love the sense that you got community at a young age, you got the idea of the process. And
Yeah.
I'm not blowing smoke. I think it's just for our viewers, listeners, and all that stuff, that reminder that the ability to be able to let go takes work. And there's nothing lazy about letting go. It's a freedom. and you could feel the freedom part when you describe it. And I think that part's really cool. Um, when you're talking to people in regards to the craft from, I mean, you've got a production company, so this happens, I'm guessing, all the time.
Mhm.
Um, do you take like remind me again who was the director, the casting director from MASH, and that show ran for 900 years. Um, that do you take those tidbits, ahas, or whatever into the building of your connections, like field? Do you do that too when you're trying to find talent, scout talent?
Um, Yes and no. I mean, I
Hmm.
think that there are a lot of business decisions now that I'm branching into producing. And I also
Right.
just wanted to say how
Yeah.
beautiful what you just said was before that. Like,
Well, I thank you because you're
thank
the
you for
one
all
that
of that.
planted the
That was,
seed.
I really did want to just point out, like, that was
Of-
so eloquent, John.
Thank you.
And I'm
Right.
so glad we're having this
Me
conversation today.
too.
Yeah, I think like when you step into the producer world,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's very much like me in real estate a little bit more,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's very cerebral at that
Hmm.
point. And so you have to step out of the actors you love.
Hmm.
You have to step out of a lot of the relationships you have,
Hmm.
and you need to start understanding the product
Hmm.
that you're trying to deliver. And while it's still an artistic product,
Hmm.
you can't let that kind of seep into the sale of the product because again, you have to you have to create a film or a short or
Hmm.
a TV pilot or whatever it is,
Right.
and you have to do all of the things necessary so that it will be successful, so you
Hmm.
can repeat it over and
Hmm.
over and over and over again.
Yep.
Because you have a lot of people to answer to. When
Hmm.
you're a producer, you are fighting for funding a lot of times. You're
So you got
asking
stakeholders. Right.
you're putting yourself on the line. Like you
Hmm.
are and you're putting other people's money on the line. So you have
Hmm.
to take that responsibility onto yourself.
Right.
And you need to make sure that you do right by those people. And I know as a real estate agent,
Hmm.
primarily working with first-time home buyers
Yeah.
and knowing how to fight for people, that
Hmm.
innately I know I'm good at that because I will fight for my first-time home buyers. Like I
Hmm.
will get them the keys if I
Hmm.
can. I will get them the keys however it
Hmm.
takes. And so I think that mentality for me has actually been a really good grounding point for me as an actor, where it's a little bit more the other side,
Right.
right? So it gives me the ability to almost see the whole scope of the project. Because again, what is so great about film is that there are so many masters of craft. Like it
Hmm.
is creating almost like an actor creates, right, their backstories, which is their
Yeah.
safety net. You create your team as a producer as your
Hmm.
safety net. It's the
Hmm.
same thing. So, having that cinematographer that maybe, your wife has worked with that like,
Hmm.
has done these dazzling shots with like
Hmm.
literally no budget, like maybe having that editor that really gets and aligns with you. Because again,
Hmm.
so much of film is post-production. It's probably one of the biggest elements of
Right.
film, right?
Hmm.
Is how you shave that off and then really being objective about the people that really align with you.
Hmm.
And once you find those people, I mean, you see, crews work
Hmm.
over and over and over again because they become your family, John. Like they become the
Hmm.
people that you love because they align with you. And those are the people that I don't mean it the wrong way, want to hang out with all the time,
There you
right?
go.
You know?
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
and when you hang out with them, like you create great things because
Hmm.
you're always in alignment. I mean, I'll speak to the cast and crew in Somewhere in Montana, and it was such a small knit cast and crew. We were
Hmm.
interchangeable. Like the cast and the crew were the same thing.
Hmm.
And the crew, I mean, I always say this, the crews are what make films great. Like they do so much of the legwork. They
Hmm.
are working their butts off, and it was
Hmm.
just so gratifying to look at the credits and to know every single person's name
That's
on the
cool.
crew for the first
Hmm.
time. Like those are my friends now. And those are people that I was buying drinks for at the bar, at the wrap
Hmm.
party, just thanking them for all of the massive amounts of effort. So when you have those people that like I had one scene in Somewhere in Montana, it was a complete breakdown scene. Everybody was quiet the whole day. Like the
Hmm.
tone of that day was so different because they gave me the space
In
to
solidarity, so to
in
speak. Right?
solidarity
Yeah.
to make that happen. And you see a lot of like the cast and crew elements. I believe that you see that in the final product. Like I think you see when everybody is a
Mhm.
tight-knit group and like it rubs off on the actors, it rubs off on the edit, like it rubs off on everything. So I think for me in this next stage, I'm just so excited about it because I see it as an opportunity to go further in my artistic journey because I think
Mhm.
I've realized recently acting is my first love and it always will
Mhm.
be. But what I really truly love is collaborating. I
There you go.
love collaborating, and that's what it's all about.
So let me ask you two last questions for the moment, which is number one. I would start with this. How would you define authenticity as it relates to you? And I'd even say it better. How would you define offset authenticity, easy for me to say, as it relates to you now, as opposed to New York and rural Virginia, blah, blah, as it relates to you now?
I feel like I've always, just tried to lead with how can I help? How can I serve
Okay.
the material?
Hmm.
I think that's one thing that I really learned in carrying a lead role
Hmm.
in somewhere in Montana with some really great actors
Hmm.
is, the second, and I always say this, the second that I was granted the role. Because you really want to believe in life, whether it's a spiritual practice, that the roles that are meant for you will find you
Hmm.
somehow. Is that, the second that I hung up the phone, hand to God, I said, okay, Matt, and I was excited. I was over the moon. Okay, Matt, now it's time to get to work
Mm.
because
Love it.
I think that's the key of
Hmm.
my authenticity as an artist is that
Yeah.
I really want to work for it. I really
Hmm.
want to show that I care.
Hmm.
And a lot of that goes into all of the elements and all of the practices and
Hmm.
teachings that I've had along the way. But I also know that you can't control everything and that it's okay to let go at the same
Hmm.
time. But
Mm.
if you lead with your heart, if
Hmm.
you lead with love, if you love what you're doing, if you find joy in what you're doing every
Hmm.
day, you will be authentic every moment of every day.
Mm. I love that. One last question, which is this, because I typically talk about, I don't limit myself to business, but I'm going to ask it more in a business sense, because especially considering you've got real estate chops, you've got actor production, you've got plenty of directions. When someone is trying to find their own arc to authenticity, when it comes time for them to speak and or present a listing presentation, or an act, or something, asking for something they want, what would you suggest would be one thing they could do to improve the chances that they would get what they want?
Hmm, it's a great question. You're all you got, and you're all you
Mm,
need. You're
mm,
all it's a lot of a lot of football
mhm.
people say that too.
Right? Sure.
We're all we got. We're all we need.
Hmm.
Um, being an actor has really taught me this practice of, the joy of your unique story
Mm,
and really being engaged in your own story and
mm,
knowing when you are coming from an authentic place and you
mhm.
really want to tell your story finding the joy in that like I'm doing right
Oh,
now on your show right
mm,
now, John. I mean, it's
that's
it's
great.
it's no different than stepping on stage. It's finding ways to know that your story is valid and that you can help people and that you've done all the work and then you get to enjoy the fruits of your label
Mhm.
and labor and just find joy in the journey at all times.
I love it. You brought a lot of joy to this interview. I'm really grateful that you showed up for me and for us. Now, I know it's mattdrago.com, so that way we'll have these links so that I don't embarrass people with www. I wouldn't do that to you. So the links will be in the bio in addition to the website, and your socials are strong. You referenced Instagram. Where are the best places to find you? Have I left anyone out that you think is a
Yeah,
strong place
yeah.
to go?
Yeah, I try to make it simple. I can only do so many social media platforms.
Mm,
There's a lot of them out there now. But give me a follow at Instagram at Matt Drago,
mm. Yep.
MattDrago.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the easiest way to follow me. From there, you've got my link tree. You've got my
Mhm.
actor website,
Oh, right.
mattdrago.com.
Yep.
You've got my production company with my wife. I didn't say it, but
I know they work
yeah,
because I know they work because I used your Linktree site. I'm a
yeah.
Linktree guy too. I know they work.
They're so great. They're so
Ain't it?
great.
Ain't it? But finish the thought. I didn't say with my wife, and I didn't say finish what you were going to say.
Yeah, so I didn't say that my wife's maiden name is Hunter, and so when we built our production company, it was
Wow.
Drago and Hunter Productions, Dragon Hunter Productions. It just kind
Wow.
of
And
worked
it
out.
all
So,
kind of worked out rather perfectly.
right?
Nice. Some things the right people and the right jobs find you, as they say. So,
100%.
Matt Drago, thanks so much for showing up for us. I'm honored. I acknowledge you. I really appreciate the authenticity and the energy. Thank you.
John, likewise, it has been just a wonderful, rewarding conversation with you today. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
I'm thrilled. And folks, you just heard another episode of Your Message Received. Again, keep liking, watching, sharing. We are delighted to get to bring authentic people to help all of us find your own arc to authenticity. John Duffin here from Duffin Media. Have a great rest of the day, and we will definitely talk soon. Bye.
And now, making its way across the finish line, Your Message Received has been a production of Duffin Media.